genuinely, how have we gotten good at it? A lot of trial and error and time. I think we underestimate. I think we live in a world that is continual information, continual success stories, continual highlight reels. And we absolutely forget that one of the best lessons and teachers is strictly time in the game.
So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining us today. I recently had a fan of the show reach out and ask how they could help support this podcast, and there are a few different ways. I wanted to touch on them briefly here. First of all, listening and downloading and subscribing to this show as you are listening right now is a huge help. Also, leaving a review wherever you are listening to this episode is a huge help. You simply click on the show and in the tab below, it'll pull down and say leave a review. That is massively helpful to podcasts. So if you're wanting to support any of your favorite podcasters, please consider leaving a review, sharing their episodes on social media, or sending a note. I cannot tell you how wonderful it is to hear from you in personal DMs, where you can find me at Call Me CEO Podcast on Instagram or at camillewalker.co. So leaning into today's episode, I wanted to talk about what a special day it is for our podcast guest. Today actually marks 15 years since she's been in business. Courtney Brown is the creator and CEO of Sense of Style, that's spelled CENTS, affordable fashion, and also Be Fulfilled, which is a center that is dedicated to helping anyone who has product that they want to bring to market, specifically women. Not only women, but she did say specifically they help a lot of women bring their product to market without having to worry about all of the stress of having that product fulfilled. And I can tell you from experience, I have had a lot of bad experiences with having a fulfillment center that did not do what it said it would do. And I know from experience from my friends that have had worked with Sense of Style and with Be Fulfilled that they always do what they say that they will do and are really incredible at customer service. What's really fun about Courtney is that she has always had a really unique sense of style. She really does. And she has a really lovely personality, but she's also really raw and authentic. And I think you're going to hear that a lot. I mean, these interviews are opening up a lot of life lessons as well as heartfelt experiences. And I know that you're going to feel that and feel of her heart and what a hard worker she is. There is so much in this episode I cannot wait for you to hear. But first, I want to thank our sponsor, Station Park, for being a sponsor of this show. I wanted to let you know that there are many things available at Station Park to create special memories and moments. One thing that is special that's coming up soon is actually on March 5th. They're having the Juniper Market, which is supporting local artisans and small businesses in the lobby of the Concierge Center. There will be treats, bath products, baby gear, jewelry, clothing, and much more. So if you want to come and support small businesses, that's a wonderful time to do that, as well as taking a look at their calendar of things that you can do together, whether it's acro yoga with Root to Rise, making pottery at As You Wish. I've done that with my kids and it is so much fun, or taking a cooking class. That is a really fun girls' night out or date night. I've done it for both, and it's always a good time. So thank you, Station Park, for being a sponsor of the show. And let's dive into how Courtney Brown built 2 multi-million-dollar businesses with a lot of grit and determination, but also learning how to settle in with her flow. She talks to us about how to work with influencers and how that transformed her business and how she's been able to grow and learn every step of the way. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Call Me CEO. I am your host, Camille Walker, and I've been looking forward to interviewing this gal for a long time. I've had to hunt her down. She's a busy, busy person.
And she's also incredibly wonderful and kind and smart, and all of the things you would hope in a friend and a mentor. Her name is Courtney Brown, and she is the owner of Sense of Style and of Be Fulfilled, which has amassed to a very successful business. And I cannot wait to dive into everything that you have to share with us here today, Courtney. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Camille, and thanks for your kind words.
You're very welcome. Now, Courtney, I have known you for a long time. I was just thinking about this morning as I was prepping for our interview today. I think the first time we met, and I'm sure you don't remember because it was probably a bigger moment for me, but I think it was at like a SNAP conference. I remember you once were one of the keynote speakers, and this was a very long time ago in the Utah space, blogging and influencing and business building. And you were there to talk about building a business. And I want to hear a little bit more about those beginning stages of building your business. I know it started as an online boutique of sorts, but it's grown to so much more. So please introduce yourself and how your business started.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old school to this whole thing. Next week, actually, March 1st, 2007 was Sense of Style's incorporation date. So I am 15 years as a business owner as of next month, which is a long time, especially in this e-commerce space. We are original to it in a lot of ways. I began in 2007, and we did not begin online. I was a young stay-at-home mom who was looking for a creative outlet. We had adopted our oldest a year and a half before, and after years of infertility, I thought, I did it. I'm here. I'm doing this mom thing, and that's my path. And I got into it, and I was like, so I'm going to need something else. I'm going to need a creative outlet. And fashion has always been something I was passionate about since I was a little girl. I was the 10-year-old girl who took her birthday money and went and bought a Blossom style dress and hat at the mall. That's a true story. You know, no choice.
Bucket hat. I remember Blossom. Yes.
Yeah. Give me the bucket hat with the flower on it.
Yes.
For those of you who saw all of the fashion that is in style in 2022 when it came around the first time in 1992, 1994. Mm-hmm. But that was the origin. So I thought, nobody is doing fashion affordably. And I am the person that all of my family and friends come to and say, so you're young, married with a young family, and how are you doing this? And I'd be like, oh, here are my tips. I started, like I said, in 2007. This is before e-commerce really was a thing. This is just as blogging was beginning, but they were family blogs. I considered starting a fashion blog, but at the time, no one had figured out how to monetize those. That would come a couple years later. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to spend the time, I'd really like to make some money doing it. And sometimes I laugh at that because if I had had the foresight to become a blogger, this might have looked slightly differently. But so I began with no business plan, no capital, nothing. I had the idea in January, and by March, I had acquired some affordable items to sell at in-home parties and boutiques and trunk shows. And that's how Sense of Style began. We did that for the first several years of the company, just, kind of start where you are with what you have. And I amassed about 40 to 50 stylists in and around the Wasatch Front in Utah and in Boise, Idaho, and down even into Arizona, where we were selling affordable, specifically shoes and accessories at in-home parties, trunk shows, craft shows. And if you remember back in those early to mid 2000s, those home parties and those trunk shows were really very popular.
Yes.
But I got about 5 years in and I realized that I had a massive problem because I'd never done more than $150,000 in revenue in a year, never paid myself anything, and I was about $50,000 in debt. And so what I had created wasn't scalable. It was a nice little fun thing I did on the side that took a ton of time, but I hadn't paid myself any money for doing it. And I'd amassed a ton of debt. So I realized I either had to let it go and walk away, or I had to shift and pivot. And that shift and pivot came for us at the end of 11 and the beginning of 12, when my dear friend that I grew up with was running the affiliate marketing program for one of the country's biggest coupon blogs. So if you go back to the crash of '08, one of the things that came out of that were coupon bloggers who were the very first women to learn how to monetize a blog. And that's where this entire industry came from, was those women who said, I've got to make some extra money on the side for my family. And hey, coupons.com will pay me if women will print these coupons from my site. And I actually have two of the biggest coupon blogs in the country to this day were girls I grew up with in my hometown of Boise, Idaho. Heather Wheeler of Crazy Coupon Lady and Colin Morgan of Hit to Save. So my very dear friend was running the affiliate marketing program at Crazy Coupon Lady at the time. And she said, hey, I really think you shouldn't give up on this. And instead you should go 100% online. And you should focus on affiliate and influencer marketing. By the way, the word influencer was not a thing then.
No.
Nobody, that hadn't been coined. It was blogger and affiliate marketing. And so I did. I pivoted. I took my revenue to zero. I got rid of all of the stylists and I took it 100% online at the end of 11, very beginning of 12. So Camille, 5 years, after 5 years of being a company, that's when I did that. And from there, focusing on affiliate and influencer marketing is when we really began to blossom and blow up. And we have since experienced year-over-year growth, went from, like I said, taking that revenue to zero and never having done over $150,000 a year to where we are today, which is owning two multi-million-dollar companies, Sense of Style and Be Fulfilled, that being the CEO of both 50 plus employees, primarily women, primarily moms. And yeah, and so that's the origin to where we are now, with a lot of pivots and challenges in the in-between.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And I love that you said after 5 years of not knowing exactly what I was doing or how it was going to work, you did that pivot and it changed everything. In that time that you were pivoting and letting go of all of those people that had worked with you, what was the hardest part of that transition for you?
That I felt like an utter failure. Right? Like, what was the motivation to go on other than a vision? Like, what was keeping me going in that time? Because what I had done for so long didn't work. Mm-hmm. And I think back on that, and I think that it was that what I had created was helping women. That greater why. I had seen women say, you know, like, it sounds crazy, but putting on this necklace or these cute pair of shoes and getting these compliments make me feel better. It makes me feel better about where I am and who I am in this world. And I was like, there's still something here. Even if I haven't figured out the how yet, there's still something here that helps and benefits people. And if I can just pivot, if I can just change it, is there a possibility that it can be more than it is now?
Well, I'm so glad you kept going. Can you remember in that pivot of that time, what it was that made you realize, like, oh, this could really work? Was there a specific time that you can think of that?
I can actually, in the fall of, I'm not sure if it was 12 or 13, but within about a year, I realized, okay, I've learned this affiliate marketing thing. We're kind of flowing with it. We're getting a little bit here and there, but I said, I need to give people a reason to show up, right? Like, I need to give them something that they can count on. And I came up with this idea of Fashion Fridays, which meant a deal on a Friday that the affiliates could count on. There would be a new, fresh fashion deal at a great price every single Friday. And we still do that to this day.
So smart.
Now we also have changed it a little, But that idea that then sparked into that consistency in the fall, it was September of, I believe, 13. I had Hip to Save, Colin Morgan pick up a boot deal. And I woke up in the morning, and this is actually kind of a funny story. My husband at the time was an ultra runner, and he was running the Bear 100 race, which is up in Logan, Utah in the mountains, and it is 100-mile foot race, right? And I was his crew. And so what that meant is I was meeting him at stops to get him food and change his shoes and his socks. And I woke up in the morning going out to crew him that first day, and I pulled up my Shopify app and I looked down and it said $4,000 in the morning. And I thought, what? Something's wrong. We'd never done $4,000 ever in the morning. What's wrong? And I quickly realized that Colin and Hip to Save had picked up this deal. And I didn't have, and it was dying because I didn't have enough inventory to cover it. So here I was trying to go through the mountains of Utah while communicating simultaneously with vendors to try to get more inventory so I could keep these sales going. And I think that day ended up being one of our biggest days. It was the biggest day to date ever. And I think we ended up doing like $12,000 or $13,000 that day in a single day in sales, right? Like this is a decade ago. And I thought, this is going to work.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's such a crazy. So were you able to get the boots in time?
Yeah, got it worked out.
Wow. Because I can tell you, trying fulfillment from, I don't know if it was shipping from overseas, but getting product is a kind of a nightmare.
Well, especially today.
Yeah.
Especially today, in today's crazy logistics world that we've never seen before, right?
So as you were building this business, I'm curious now that we're talking about fulfillment, because it was around that time, 12 or 13, that my sister and I did a deal site for like 5 minutes. Because literally we sold some pea coats that were hot on the market. You probably remember this. And there was someone that had overpromised the amount that she had. And we had also sourced some, and we were out driving these pea coats around on the week of Christmas, trying to get people their pea coats because they had been held up in customs. And I just thought, man, this fulfillment business is so hard. I don't think I like the customer service. I hate letting people down. Like, how did you get through moments like that? Yeah. And obviously you'd been doing it for 5 years, so it probably didn't take you by storm like it did me, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
A lot of learning, right?
Yeah.
So sense of style, and for those that don't know, CENTS, right? We've always been about affordability and fashion. And so because of that, we don't have huge margins. We have had to become ultra lean and clean from a fulfillment and an ops standpoint, right? And one of the gifts of that is I have a partner, my husband, John, who ended up joining Sense of Style full-time in the fall of 14. And he is incredibly good at operations. So he came in on as COO and made sure we had the technologies in place, leveraged the shipping and got the correct shipping partners, the correct customer service softwares, all of those things. And genuinely, how have we gotten good at it? A lot of trial and error and time. I think we underestimate.
Yeah.
I think we live in a world that is continual information, continual success stories, continual highlight reels. And we absolutely forget that one of the best lessons and teachers is strictly time in the game.
That's a quote right there. I'm like, yes, that's so true. There are so many things that are learned along the way. And I love that you brought that into the storyline of your business, because bringing your husband on board, was that a huge leap of faith? Like, walk me through that process a little bit about when you both decided that it was time to do that and what you felt like needed to be in place for that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the VP of sales at an import company.
Perfect.
And he was very good at his job, but he was on the road a lot, right? He managed 40 plus sales guys across the country. And it was starting to become an opportunity cost for us not, because as I like to say, I built Sense of Style in the crumbs of time, right?
Yeah.
I built Sense of Style in the Netflix hours. The number of years that I worked from 9 to midnight is a decade plus, right? It's only within the last 5 years, 7 years, 5 years probably, that I work 9 to 5, right? This is the new part of the journey, not, and for John, it was well over a year of discussion, and it was, what could we accomplish together, and are we a good fit working together that we couldn't accomplish alone? And honestly, walking away from his salary and saying, hey, this is all on us, that was scary. It really, really was. It ended up being like a great decision for us, but we were very honest with each other about what our roles were, where we would both fit, and we continue to have those discussions today, right? And it evolves and it changes, and we have to talk about it in every regard, not just like business roles, but home roles, like who's in charge of what, who, we use the term lead parent, right? Like who peels off if the school calls, right? Is that you or is that me? And for a long time, from about 2014, when John joined, to about 2018, 19, when we started Be Fulfilled, he was the lead parent. And then I have kind of stepped back into that role in some regards. And then I understand that this is a place of privilege, but I'll be very honest, we now both have assistants that also help us in that. And I think this is the moral of it, is that it's ever evolving. And just because it worked yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. And it has to be continual conversation around it.
Yeah. I love that honest response, because the couples that I've interviewed and talked to will often say that it is changing and you have to keep talking, because if you're not talking, it's just like, it kind of compounds. I mean, any marriage is a struggle. Marriage is hard, but communication is what makes it flourish and work. And then if you add business to that, it's a whole other layer. So I commend you both for being able to be such good communicators, because that's the only way you could be successful.
Thank you. It is, it's a continual process, and we're better at it sometimes and worse at it sometimes. But for example, this morning, I was in an hour conversation with he and I and our assistants about kids' schedules, because last week we dropped things, and I never want it to be my children to face that sacrifice, because I have chosen my life path that way. And I'm not perfect at it, even in the least. And if anybody says that they are, I would double click in on that and question whether they're being completely authentic, because it's difficult. It's difficult and completely worthwhile. If you're thinking of working with your spouse, I think clarity of communication is the number one thing. Defining roles is huge, but then asking if you are compatible in that way, because some people are and some people aren't. For us, it works really well when we have our own responsibilities. When those get blurry, it gets a lot harder.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Now, going back to you're starting to work with bloggers who are not yet called influencers. What do you think? I know you've worked with so many different influencers. You've worked with a lot of different affiliate. I don't know how many programs you've used, but if someone is considering working with an affiliate, whether it be an influencer or not, what is your best advice about the fulfillment products to use, as far as like technology and or how to find the best fit for your company?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot to that. And so first of all, you need a software, an affiliate management software, for sure. That gives the affiliate, the influencer, the blogger, whatever term you want to use, the trust that their commissions are being tracked properly. So for those who don't know what affiliate marketing is, it is that an influencer or someone of influence talks about that product, and when they make a sale, they get some sort of commission or kickback on that sale, right? And affiliate, they run the gamut from Amazon. Some people only make 1% to 8% on Amazon, dependent, to if you're working with an MLM as an affiliate, right? Like sometimes you can be working upwards of 30 and 35%. Sense of Style, we pay between 10 and 18% based on sales volume. I am a huge fan of affiliate and influencer marketing because it's a mutually beneficial marketing plan, as opposed to a sponsored post, which unless you have super deep pockets and you're Procter and Gamble, I think is a much more difficult thing to do as a small business. So for me, it's been huge, and you need that software. And we have used 2 over the years. We still continue to use 2. We use Share a Sale, which is very powerful, but very old school in a lot of ways. With the uptick of social media buying and Instagram buying, we have moved a lot to Lead Dino because of the ease of use. So for sure, those are the 2 we've used. There are many more. That's just where I have familiarity and experience.
Yeah, I can agree with both of those. I've used both. And I think that just what you said, Share a Sale, there's a lot more available as far as like worldwide what you can be an affiliate with, where Lead Dino, I feel like if you have a relationship with a company and you can set that up together, the ease of use is so nice because it's just one click. You don't have to search forever. And
exactly,
I like it.
Super ease of use. From a brand perspective, it is not nearly as powerful. Reporting tools and mechanisms aren't there, and even what you can do with your program is not there just based on the tech. But from the influencer side, from ease of use and quick to use, it's Lead Dino all the way. So it depends, right?
Yeah.
As far as I get asked this question a lot, how you get influencers to post about your product. And I think the answer is it's relationships. And how did I gain these relationships? Well, I showed up at Snap conference in 2014, 15, 16. I sponsored Snap, sponsored Alt, showed up the places where influencers were going to be. And I didn't hit them up randomly. We became friends. Camille, we have known each other for close to a decade, right? Mm-hmm. I actually think we met at Pinners Conference.
Oh, that probably is what it was.
As I'm sitting here, I'm realizing the very, very first Pinners Conference, and you were doing like a webisodes at the time. Mm-hmm. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I actually helped them do their marketing, their first run. I wasn't paid anything, but I helped get everyone there. So yeah, that's actually how I helped with their marketing and getting people lined up to be speakers and different things like that.
So then just dropping into somebody's DMs, sure, that's a strategy, but knowing someone and having a conversation, and then always looking at it as being a mutually beneficial value exchange, mm-hmm. right? And I am a big believer in providing and giving that value first. How can I serve you? How can I help you? What do you need? You've got a small conference, you need swag for something. You've got a small conference. Absolutely. Let me see what we can do. We spent years sponsoring conferences and influencer events, and that's where I met people. And those meetings turned into true, genuine friendships over the years and into some of our best business relationships. Ultimately, just like anyone's going to tell you in sales, is it comes down to relationships. This isn't just about, selling a product. It's about the people involved.
Yeah. Now, tell me more about Be Fulfilled, because I love that you're saying so much about relationships and how that has blossomed into making your business so much more than it was in the first 5 years, was because you invested time into other people and to relationships. And I know that working with affiliates, really helped to blossom Be Fulfilled. How did that transition happen for you? Because that really was such a unique service to be able to offer.
So we spun off our sister company, Be Fulfilled. We had the idea in 17, and we kind of incubated the idea in 18 and spun it off in whole in 19. With the idea, so I've had a front seat to this emergence of social media marketing, influencer marketing, affiliate marketing over the last decade. I've literally watched it happen. And as such, I've watched kind of the market around it. And we have been at the forefront, all of us, of watching the democratization of commerce in the United States. It happened in the music industry, right? Like that's such an easy place for us to point to, that you can say it was these massive record labels, a few people making every single decision. And now anybody can put their music on Spotify or iTunes and find a following. Now they say that no one will ever sell as many records as NSYNC did in the early 2000s, right? Because everybody was buying that. And now we have the choice of getting very specific on, I like Americana folk. And Spotify serves you up all of these different people that sound similar, right? That's new. That is a new thing. And we're seeing the same thing in commerce, right? It went from the big department stores. You could shop at Macy's, you could shop at JCPenney, at Sears, dependent upon where you lived in the country. You maybe had one choice, but with the invention of the internet and technology, it has gone from those big down to these digitally native brands like Sense of Style or a Cotopaxi, or, you name them. They're everywhere you turn, a Fond Design, a Freshly Picked, right? We saw in 17 that influencers themselves were wanting to become their own product, create their own products and become their own brands in that sense. You can point to the Joanna Gaines, right? Who has made that into an absolutely incredible business, but like going into Target, or, I mean, I'm getting geeky here, but do you remember Oh Joy for Target and what a big deal that was? Back in the day, everybody was seeing this opportunity, and we realized that we were uniquely situated because, remember, I said we had to get really good at operations to help women grow product-based businesses through operations. So Be Fulfilled is an operations platform that we help with the product sourcing, development, fulfillment, customer care, and website management for other women-run brands and influencers. We don't do sales and marketing. That's not our gig. That is what influencers, that ability to create and create the buzz, they're already good at that. We get to be the back end and be like their back end ops team and deal with all of that stuff that, whether or not you realize it, takes so much time and energy.
Yes, so much.
Like, what if you got to leverage my 15 years of fulfillment knowledge, right? Of product sourcing knowledge. He's been in sourcing his entire career. I've been in it in my entire career. So we come together and we say, let us use our knowledge to help you create a product line and grow it faster on its own. We saw the opportunity, and it was, quite frankly, an answer to a lot of Sense of Style's critical issues. We have always been bootstrapped with a little bit of debt financing, and so we could only grow as fast as we could buy more inventory. We didn't have services. So it's very common that product-based businesses bring on services and service-based businesses bring on product to grow and expand. Well, this spin-off of a company is service-based, right? Because we're doing the customer care, we're doing the fulfillment, but then also we're helping them source and create product. So we have 40 plus clients at Be Fulfilled and growing every day. But again, it was a pivot that needed to happen. It was, I can't stress that enough in my story, is especially how fast everything moves these days. If you're not always willing to be looking and shifting and thinking what's next and how can I move and pivot, you will be left behind. The old model will not continue to work, only from the standpoint of things are always changing.
That's so true. And it's funny because any kind of online business is that way, for people who had been blogging 10 years ago to be a blogger / influencer today is so different than what it was 10 years ago. And even within that space, now everything's vertical video, where a year ago, 2 years ago, well, I guess it was a couple more than two, it was just the pretty photos, and it's interesting that pivot and that flow is such a big part of success. And I know that that's something you really believe in. And we were at an event recently where we were doing a tarot card reading. And I was so surprised when you said, yeah, I do readings. And I'm like, what? And I had gotten, which I think is awesome. So I'm going to bug you about it. But I had gotten the card, the cups. I got two, one that was with the Woman of Cups and one that had like mini cups. And that's all about receiving and the flow and like letting things happen. And that was some advice that you gave me was, you're in a space where things will happen. You just need to let them come to you and be in that flow. So my question is, how do you allow yourself to be in the flow and yet be progressive and aware of changes so that you're not being left behind? What would be your best advice for that?
Okay. I'm going to say I am super amateur at tarot and I only read for family and friends when asked.
Yeah.
It's not like it's another.
It's like a side thing. Yes.
No, I'm not like getting money for doing tarot.
Yes.
Beyond my scope of ability. So just be clear. That's such a good question. Flowing with life, surrendering to the flow of life has been an active practice for me in the last several years. If you had asked me even 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even known what that meant. Mm-hmm. So again, I think we need to give ourselves grace as we expand and learn new concepts. Maybe I had done it, but I wasn't conscious of it. So when we were talking on Instagram and DMs, you had said you were reading The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, which is a fantastic book. And one of my top 3 favorite books of all time is actually his autobiography, The Surrender Experiment. And if anyone is interested in this idea of flow, because it absolutely blows my mind every single time, and I reread it every single year. My answer to that is, it's such a broad thing, but whatever life has presented to you at that time, do your best at it. Work hard at it. Show life, show God, show the universe that you are willing to show up for what's in front of you. Even if it's not ideal, even if you want to be an influencer that Target is asking you to create a line for them, but right now you've got 1,000 followers, show up for the 1,000 followers like it's everything and have gratitude for that and do your best at it. Wow. Because when you do that, all of a sudden another opportunity is going to open up for you. And when you continue to show life that you will show up for every opportunity, the good and the bad, and give it your all, it's amazing how other things begin to open up. And that's more like existential answer. From a more strategic answer, I would say every single year since 2014, we spend a couple days at the beginning of the year looking at what we do our strategic meetings, where we try to identify the critical issues in our companies. What are the opportunities? Where are the threats? What are we good at and what are we bad at? And if we don't look at this critical issue, if we just continue to ignore it, it will become a bigger problem for us. So how are you doing strategy? How are you saying, I'm really good at photos. I'm great at taking Instagram images, but guess what? Instagram is not a photo sharing platform anymore. If I don't learn about video, I will be left behind. Mm-hmm. So when are you taking that time to slow down enough from the day-to-day to be strategic?
That's really good advice. I love that. My husband and I do a similar thing where at the beginning of the year, we set goals, and not just for the year, but kind of like 5 and 10 year as well. And what's really fun, I feel like when you write something down and you put intention behind it, that we have found those lists that we've written 5 and 10 years ago. And we're like, oh my heck, we did every single thing on that list. And it's so cool because I think a lot of it is identifying, like you said, the strengths, the weaknesses, and creating a strategic plan, but then being able to put it out into the universe with intention and creating
Absolutely.
that space for that growth and for whatever it is that you want. Do you feel like that's been true for you as well?
Absolutely. I read a lot. So I often in these interviews people, and I always refer to books. So I apologize. I
love it.
The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer. And if you haven't been introduced to Wayne Dyer, I think everybody should listen to him. He died a couple of years ago, but his thought leadership is phenomenal. And if you're at all interested in growing a business, do not underestimate the power of your mindset work and growing your own mindset. It will benefit you greatly. But this idea of the power of intention, I think he says it so beautifully, is like intention is literally a force with God, right? So when we set an intention and we put it out there in writing or or we verbalize it, there is something greater and bigger beyond us that is working with that. Now, I think a lot of times we set intentions and think it's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah. Again, timing, putting in the work, putting in the effort, and letting life unfold. Yeah, you probably won't look back in a week and be like, look, I got all my intentions. But in 5 years, in a decade, those are the type of timelines that we have to be comfortable working within if we want to make an impact and have a life's work, not just a moment in time, right? Mm-hmm. I think that we are so quick to look at people and be like, well, that just happened for her overnight. That's not true. You don't know the years she spent honing that skill, and that just the opportunity opened up at the right time. I think it was Steve Jobs that said that that his was the longest overnight success story ever told, right? Like, we all think that it should happen so quickly, but the key is to enjoy it while it's happening, find gratitude in it, and give it your all, because then all of a sudden the magic happens of more opening up. This does not mean it's not without difficulty or hardship, right?
Yeah.
There will always be difficulty and hardships. There will always be failures. In the failures, I don't really believe in failure, but there will always be those moments that you feel like it's a failure. But if you can take those and start saying, well, what did I learn? Right? Mm-hmm. Well, what did I learn? And then say, well, I learned that, so I know next time I got to do this. What did I learn? Okay. And it's just this ever evolving, expanding kind of unfolding, I guess.
Can you think of a time that you had a failure that transformed your business into something better? I mean, I'm sure just from the experience that you just glossed over a little bit, that's what you've done all along the way. Is there one that is specifically sticking out in your mind that you can think of that would help our listeners?
Absolutely. And this is a fairly recent one. And it actually gets me, probably one I haven't shared hardly ever. In 2019, I turned over 90% of my team. And it was humbling, to say the least.
Wow.
It was difficult. It was painful. It was a lot of emotion. And why did this happen? And how did I get this so wrong? Right? And so, but what I can tell you is from that moment, from that time, everything shifted. It had to happen in order to make space and room for new. And the revenue goals that were so difficult for us to hit from before, all of a sudden happened like that, because we had a fresh outlet, fresh talent, new mindsets. And it was 2018 and 2019 were two of the hardest years of my life, mentally, physically, emotionally. They were terrible. I was burnt out. I was unhappy. I took a sabbatical in the fall of 18, and I hired a president in January of 19, and my entire team left. And I honor them for that decision. I honor that they saw a path for them that was better, and I think that is beautiful. It doesn't mean it wasn't freaking hard. But again, I'm going to remind you that we are now 3 years removed from that, and my companies have never been in a better position because of that quote unquote failure.
In that time of taking a sabbatical, what was it that was important for you, and how much time did you take off for that healing and for that space for you to recoup?
It's an interesting story. On September 30th, 2018, I was not in a good place. My health was failing. I was so stressed. I was unhappy. And we were driving home from my mother's in Idaho. And I turned to John in the car and I said, what if instead of going into the office tomorrow, I got on an airplane instead? And being the supportive partner that he is, he said, I think that's a really good idea. He had actually floated the idea to me earlier that summer. And the next day, I used frequent flyer miles and I got on a plane by myself and I went to London, England for a week. And I spent most of my time in a little kind of mystical town in the English countryside called Glastonbury, having kind of my own little spiritual pilgrimage and experience of just really getting quiet and asking myself what I truly wanted after having hustled for 11 years, right?
Yeah.
And the answer came outside of myself, I know, because I never would have chosen this, was you need to take time off to heal, and not just a week. So October 1st is the start of the fourth quarter. And if you know, in the United States, that is when most American retailers do 50% of their revenue. And so I came back and I said I was taking the rest of the year off from October to December. And I did. And I stayed home and I cooked dinner every night. And I really worked on me. And it was a good choice. It also had unforeseen consequences, like I told you, because then I come back in 19, I hired the president to help me. And like I said, people left. And I take responsibility for that. That is me. That is ultimately, they made those choices for themselves, but also based on choices I made. And it, again, talk about being afraid, but just trusting that what you desire, what you need in that moment is for a reason, right?
Yeah.
One of my company values is hustle. And because I believe in consistent work, but I do not believe in the hustle culture any longer that we have created. I 100% believe in hard work. I 100% believe in consistent work. I do not believe in frantic work or don't ever take a break work, because I actually think that's us trying to control instead of flow.
Yeah. Wow. That's so profound and so refreshing to hear that honesty and to hear about that evolution of yourself, and also to translate that to your team and how that in the end turned the tide on creating massive success after many, many years. That's incredible. Would you say that through doing this as a family affair, what has been the thing that you hope that your children will learn watching their mom and their dad working together and building incredible businesses together?
I hope that they learn that their dreams and their desires matter, and that if they consistently pursue them, that magic happens.
Well, I think you're doing just that. That's incredible. Courtney, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. I know that our listeners are going to want to check you out with both of your offerings. So please tell us about where we can find you and connect with you.
Yeah, you can connect with me personally on Instagram at Courtney Ellen Brown, just my name. And then Sense of Style, spelled CENTS of style, and then Be Fulfilled. Although we're not super active over at Be Fulfilled, but if that's interesting to you, please reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the platform to talk.
You're welcome.
Wow. I mean, that was a good one, right? I hope that as you're listening to this, if you found this helpful or any piece of it that you would like to share with a friend, please do so. You can do that on social media or by leaving a comment or a review on the show notes. Please tell me what you liked. I would love to hear about it. Thank you again for joining us today, and I will see you next time. Hey, if you're listening to this right now, I don't know that you know this, but each and every week, I take our weekly guest and do a tiny mini episode on Instagram Live. They are usually on Wednesdays between 10 to noon Mountain Standard Time, and today's episode is no exception. I'm going to have Courtney live with me tomorrow at Call Me CEO Podcast on Instagram. I hope you will follow me and enjoy little snippets that are extra to what we're learning here. I hope to see you there.